Hello, everyone, and welcome to Teacher Keith's 3 Bad Habits You Must Break When You Are Teaching Phonics. Super excited to have you here today. We have over 700 people from 65 countries around the world registered for this webinar today. So as we let people come in and we get to know each other, I just wanted to take a moment to tell you a little bit about myself for those of you that don't know me or you're not familiar with me. So my name is Keith Tacey, also known as Teacher Keith, and I am from America, originally from Michigan, lived in Seattle for a few years. I have now been living in Hanoi, Vietnam for the last 11 years. And I am a certified teacher, certified in secondary education, got my degree in Michigan at Saginaw Valley State University. Go Cardinals! And I moved to Vietnam just weeks after graduation. And I've been out here teaching English as a foreign language in Vietnam ever since. I've managed a couple different international schools here in Vietnam. Both of them were kindergartens, working with children roughly 2 to 6 years old. I was the academic manager, the international manager, and I also managed an international Montessori school recently here in Hanoi. 3 years ago, I opened my very own English language center with my wife, Hung, and we now have over 275 students studying phonics, reading, writing, speaking, STEM, and a lot more. And today, I'm here to tell you all about our favorite subject, phonics, and to share with you some of my tips and then to talk about the 3 bad habits. So getting into it, before we get started, first of all, if you like what you hear today on the video, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell. I really appreciate your views. I really appreciate your time coming here to watch the webinar. And the more that I hear back from you and I get that feedback, the more motivated I am to offer future webinars and to offer up more free items and other fun videos and resources on the channel. So please check that out. Also, before we get started, I just wanted to mention if you're watching on the Podia app platform or on YouTube, if you look down below in the description, there's a special 30% discount for webinar attendees only for my online Jolly Phonics training with a certificate. So I am a certified Jolly Phonics trainer. I've been teaching Jolly Phonics for 3 or 4 years. I've been certified for 2 years, and I now offer online Jolly Phonics training all around the world. And webinar registrants get 30% off, but that is only available for the next 7 days. There's a coupon code in the description. You can follow the links. You can email me if you have any questions. But enough about that. Let's move on. I want to jump into the webinar here. We've introduced myself, and if you want to drop a comment in the live chat, let me know where you're watching from. I would appreciate that. But what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to go through a list of 10 of kind of my important tips and tricks that I think everyone should know. And then after that, I'm going to emphasize the big 3 bad habits that you must break when you're teaching phonics. And then after that, I'm going to leave some time for a question and answer from those of you watching. So I'll take some time to do my best to answer your detailed questions. So here we go. Sorry, looking over here on my notes here. The first thing I want to mention is, so as I said, we are teaching Jolly Phonics here in Hanoi, and we have taught over 500 students Jolly Phonics. And we have basically taken what I learned in my Jolly Phonics training and we adapted it to English language learners. We simplified it. So for those of you that are teaching English language learners around the world, this will really be good for you. For those of you that are teaching native English students, native English speaking students, this will also be good for you because it works really, really well with the struggling readers, but it also is a great system for the good readers as well. So jumping in, first thing I want to mention is I really stress good handwriting to my teachers here at the school. I'm left-handed, so by default, I suppose my handwriting is a little bit messy, but it is so important for you when you are presenting your lesson to your children to have nice, clean, consistent handwriting on the board at all times. I take it a whole step further. We have a board that has grid lines on it. My letters are always the same size. I write them to fill the square in the grid. And the other thing I do is I copy as much as possible the Sassoon infant font, which you find in the Jolly Phonics resources, or if you've ever used any other phonics resources, you know how clean those fonts are. So I write in a very nice font that doesn't have any distractions, doesn't have any funny looking letters. They're pretty standard and children have seen them before. They're easy to recognize. So really important that your handwriting is neat, that you are consistent, that you're using bright colors, that you're using a clean board, clean presentation. I don't like to use technology too much because the children's eyes glaze over. So I know some people are screaming at me, why don't you use a screen? But for me, I love to use the board and a marker, but just make sure your handwriting is clean and easy for them to see. The next thing I would stress is that, and this is really important, you need to choose your words carefully. I had like 500 words when I started my program, and I thought, okay, this is great. I have everyone covered. So the average student will be able to get, a good number of the words right. The weaker students, they'll get less right, but they can focus on those words. And the really good students have a challenge. But then I was reminded of my university teaching days and how important it was to have a very clear goal for the students that you can assess them on. And you want to have realistic expectations, and you want them to be able to pass a certain percentage of the lesson. So what I did is I went through all of the phonics sounds in Jolly Phonics, and I actually handpicked 5 words for every single sound that I assess my students on. So for the first 4 in Jolly Phonics, s, at, I have a total of 5. But then every other sound in my phonics program, in the Jolly Phonics program, I have chosen 5 words per sound. This is really important because 5 is a good number to get some practice. You can mix up the starting sounds, mix up the ending sounds, mix up the vowels in there, but it's not overwhelming to the student. So in one group of 6 sounds, they're learning, a total of 30 words, and it's not terribly overwhelming. 30 words per sound. Sorry, 5 words per sound, 30 per group. All right, moving into my next little tip here is you want consistency in your presentation. Especially phonics is for generally young children. Here in Vietnam, we teach it to kids anywhere from 4 to 9 or 4 to 10 years old, depending. So with the young children, they love consistency. And if you mix up their schedule, if you do things out of order, if you do it one way this day and a different way the next day, they will get confused. Some will get frustrated. They will lose focus. They appreciate consistency. So on my board, I actually have a section up here for my schedule. And then over here on the other side, I have a section for reviewing the sounds. Down here, I have a section for reading practice to review all of the words you've been learning. The middle section in the bottom is for the new sounds and words. And the middle section above is for games. And the bottom right is for me to take notes during my class. I always use the board in the same way every single class. I don't tell that to students, but they pick up on it very quickly. They know when I move over here, it's time for us to review our sounds. It's time for us to review our songs. It's time for us to review our actions. They know when I move down here, it's time to start reviewing the reading, the sounding, the blending, the reading. They know when I move over here, it's game time. We're learning our new sounds. Sorry, up here, it's game time. And they know that we're interacting with the review words and having some fun, playing different games. And I move down here, it's time to learn new actions, learn new songs, learn new stories. And they understand all of that. And if I skip any of it accidentally, they are the first ones to let me know, hey, you forgot this. So being consistent is also a great accountability system for you because your students will remind you if you mess something up. All right, next up on my list, we have putting dots under the words for the younger students. I don't think this is only for the Jolly Phonics program, but if you've ever seen it, they have beautiful letters, and under the sounds, not the letters, they have big black dots. And the big black dots represent the sounds in a word. So you could have, let's see, let me think of a digraph. There we go, fish. Okay, so we have f, I, sh, and of course you have the digraph sh. So sh is 2 letters, but it is only 1 sound. So by putting the dot under the sounds, the children can more easily count how many sounds are in a word. They can see how many letters are in a word, of course. And then the other thing that the dot really helps with is it helps them see digraphs. I want to kind of go off on a side note here. In Jolly Phonics, they teach digraphs very, very early. I like to explain it like we think that children who are younger can learn a language better when they are younger. So the earlier they learn, the better they will be in the end. And I believe the same thing about digraphs and Jolly Phonics, and more specifically synthetic phonics. They believe the same thing. So in the Jolly Phonics program, you learn your first digraph in group 4, which in my program that I have designed with Jolly Phonics, we are learning our first digraph with the older kids. We're learning it in class number 11, which is only our 6th week. So just after a month. With the younger kids, they are learning the first digraph in their 20th class, which is week 11. So in the 3rd month. Whereas a program like I Can Read, they're not teaching digraphs until much, much later in the program. So I'm done on my side note there. Sorry about that. These dots work wonders for struggling readers. Now, I like to get rid of them as soon as I can because obviously when we're reading, we don't see dots when we're reading, but they're a really good way to scaffold your learning, to offer support as you are just starting to teach children what are letters, what are sounds, what are words, and how do we work with them. So they are very, very helpful. All right, next up I have make sure that your words are manageable. Not just in number of words. Like I told you earlier, I choose, hello, Trisha from India. Super happy to have you. Thank you so much for your comment. Not just in number of words, like I chose 500 and then I narrowed it down to 5 words per sound for a total of 195 words. And then plus my alternatives, I have a total now of 250 words in my entire program. But you want to make sure that your words are manageable in length, in difficulty as well. You want to teach, you want to differentiate your learning or your teaching. So you have your kids in the middle, you have your weaker kids, and you have your stronger kids. And you want to know what they are capable of. And when you are assessing, you want to give words that challenge everyone. You don't want to give words where these kids will do great and then these kids will be bored and they're too easy. So make sure it's manageable. Don't make it super long. Okay, I'll give you an example. One word that I thought, oh, this is cool and it should throw some people off, zigzag. Okay, for a phonics learner, especially an English language learner, I found that to be a very difficult word for them. And so I tossed it out. It was just too long for me, too complicated. And I replaced it with zest. So zest. Little difficult with the ST ending, but not as long, not as crazy. Hello, Akula from India as well. Thank you for commenting. Akula's Smart Phonics. Thank you so much. So be very careful with the difficulty of words. I'm not saying don't challenge your students, okay? Obviously, we need to know what they're capable of, and we should be throwing all kinds of tests and challenges at them. That's what makes this fun. But I'm very picky about assessment because if we can't assess well, then we can't prove to parents that the kids are actually learning. So if you are assessing on really difficult words, then what is that going to show the parents? So I like to be very picky about the types of words, the difficulty of words, so the children can grow in confidence and they can read 85% of these words or more, just like a native English speaker. Or in the case of a native English speaker, they can read 85% or more of these words fluently. So just be careful with the quality of words, not quality, the difficulty of words that you are choosing for your program. The next thing I would like to talk about is alternative spellings. For those of you that might not be familiar with the term, I mean, it's a general term, but especially in Jolly Phonics, they have 17 alternative spellings. As an American English speaker, I have narrowed those alternative spellings to 11. But I want to share a story with you about how, when I wanted to become a Jolly Phonics trainer, what they told me. So for me, I was teaching all of the 42 sounds in order, and I would introduce the alternative sounds at the very end of the program and the last couple classes. And then I would also introduce tricky words at that time, right before we moved into a reading program. And in my 4-month interview process with Jolly Phonics to become a certified Jolly trainer, they said to me, hey, everything looks great. We love what you're doing. We have 2 questions. When do you teach tricky words? And when do you teach your alternatives? And I said, oh, I just put them at the end. Tricky words, especially because you just memorize them. They're sight words. They're high frequency sight words that are used all the time. They're not phonetic. You can't sound them out. So I just tack them on at the end. The alternatives, I just also throw on the end because I wanted to. And so they said, hey, that's, we understand that, but we highly recommend that you teach your alternatives at the same time as you are teaching the standard sounds. So as an example, the first digraph in Jolly Phonics is the sound A, that is the A and the I. They come together and they say A. And so this digraph A can also be spelled with the letters A and the letter Y. So when you bring those together, they also say A. So the AY is an alternative spelling for the AI digraph. So they said, hey, when you are introducing A, the digraph, you should also talk about the alternatives. And this made total sense. It was something I had overlooked. But I just want to tell all of you out there, especially there's a lot of Jolly Phonics people here, the Jolly Phonics people up at the top, they said, hey, we highly recommend alternatives should be taught at the same time as the standard sounds. They also said that tricky words should be sprinkled throughout the program, like 2 or 3 today, 2 or 3 the next day, 2 or 3 the next day, instead of at the end like I was. For those of you that are not familiar with the term tricky words are Jolly Phonics' way of talking about sight words, high frequency sight words. So they're the most common words that we see in the English language, that we use in the English language, and they are not phonetic. You cannot sound them out. So, and so you teach the tricky words, couple per class, because you just memorize. There's not really too much to it. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is I just want to throw out some game ideas. We're almost to the big 3 bad habits that you should break when you're teaching phonics. Akula asks, how many alternatives are in UK Jolly Phonics? Officially, from the official Jolly Phonics app, there are 17 alternative sounds. Being an American English speaker, I reduced that to 11. But for you, I know in India, they generally speak British English. So there are 17 alternatives. If you download the Jolly Learning app, I believe it's free on Android, and it costs right now about $5 on Apple and $5 on a MacBook as well. It's on sale, 50% off. If you download the official Jolly Learning app, it has all the sounds, all the stories, all the songs, all the actions, and all the alternatives and trickies as well. Going back to the trickies, I remembered one more thing I wanted to say. There are 72 tricky words in 6 groups of 12. So that's kind of how they organize it. But I wanted to throw some games at you. So just a couple quick ideas. One game that I do with my phonics is when I have like 15 words on the board written in columns, very easy to read. I have my iPad or a whiteboard, and I hide it from the kids, and I write a word on it, and they can't see it, but they see the list of 5 or 15 words that they can choose from, and they guess not by saying the word, but by sounding, blending, and reading the word. So they actually practice reading to make their guess. And then if they're right, I show them and we read it together as a class. If they're wrong, I call on someone else. And then to make it more interesting, I invite them to come up and write on the board and choose their own words. And it's really a lot of fun. Another game I play is Hangman, but I don't draw the picture of the hangman. I don't hang anybody. And I also don't, there's no loser. So you just keep guessing, and the kids guess the sounds. And they're only allowed to pick a sound, one sound. They're not allowed to guess the whole word. Otherwise, the game would be over very quickly. And it's a really just fun way to interact with these words. The kids really enjoy it. Those are two of my favorite ones. And then one other game that I really love to play for kind of dictation and listening, but my kids aren't very good at writing yet because they're young. I take plastic letters. We have them on a table in front of us. I have two sets, like group one, and two children come up. And then I sound out, blend, and read a word to them. They listen and they grab the letters they hear and they rearrange them to spell the words. I usually give them 2 words each. They're really good at it. They love it a lot. So those are just a couple of games I wanted to throw out to you. Those are things that I like to play when I'm teaching my phonics classes. The last note I want to make before getting into our big 3 bad habits you must break when teaching phonics, choose your font. So generally speaking, in the UK and England, they are using pre-cursive font. So on the letters, there's little tails on the bottom of every letter, and that's pre-cursive or pre-joined up writing. And it's kind of to get the children ready for cursive. Here in Vietnam also, they're very big on cursive handwriting, so it's really helpful. But in America, cursive is pretty much dead. But if you are in a school in America and you're teaching phonics, you just want to make sure that you're being consistent. You're either using the pre-cursive with the tail, or you're using print. And Jolly Phonics does have both, and the resources that I sell online also have both of those as well. So, all right, that's my top 10. I want to take a moment to check in with you guys before I get into my 3 bad habits. If anyone has a question out there, go ahead and drop it in the live chat or say hello. Let me know where you're from. I know, like I said, we are here with over 700 registrants today from 65 countries all over the world. Super excited to have you guys for this webinar today. And I'm getting ready to talk about my 3 big bad habits that you must break when teaching phonics. But before I do that, I just wanted to check in, see how everyone's doing, see if anyone has any questions. All right, with that being said, we're just going to jump right into the next section. So here we go. 3 big bad habits that you must break when teaching phonics. Number 1, stop teaching capital letters. Stop teaching uppercase letters. Okay? Now, I know to some of you that sounds crazy, but here's where I'm coming from. You should at some point introduce capital letters to them. You should at some point introduce uppercase letters to them, but you should not do it until they have mastered the 42 or 44 sounds. In Jolly Phonics, I say 42 because in American English you have 42, but sometimes depending on dialect, there can be 44. Don't teach capital letters. The reasoning behind this is most of the time when you're reading, you see capital letters only at the beginning of a sentence. You see capital letters when it's the name of a person, place, or thing, and you see capital letters in advertising. But the vast majority of the time, when you are reading anything, the letters are lowercase. So obviously, little children, they're going to see lowercase more than capital or uppercase. So don't teach the uppercase letters. My other reasoning for this is children are young and they need to focus. And when you give them a lot of extra information, even if it's good information, sometimes it is hard for them to zero in on the task that you are actually trying to teach them. So if you overload them with too much information all at once, it can slow down the learning process. Now, please don't shoot the messenger. I'm speaking from experience myself, teaching English language learners here in Vietnam. We've had great results. Now, my little shortcut is that I figured out in Vietnam, they learn them in their own school at a very young age. So in my program, I actually never have to teach uppercase letters because they're already getting them at their school. So that's my little way to cheat. But even if you're in a public school, I highly recommend make sure they master the lowercase letters, sounds before you get into the uppercase. All right. Looks like we didn't lose anyone after that first rule. So let me move on to the next bad habit. This one is my favorite one. Please stop saying the names of the letters. Yes, you heard me correctly. Please stop saying the names of the letters. You do not need to know the names of the letters to be able to read. You do not need to know the alphabet song to be able to read. You do not need to know alphabetical order to be able to read. You do not need to know the names of the letters to be able to spell your name. Now, I know that may sound controversial. My favorite video of all time, Letter Factory. The A says ah, the A says ah. Every letter makes a sound. The A says ah. I mean, come on. My nieces and nephews grew up on that video. My own boys grew up on that video when they were younger. I love the video. It's so much fun. But don't say the letter names. Think about the alphabet song, okay? Like anybody can sing the alphabet song, but if you ask them to stop and just say the alphabet, they can't do it. They've just memorized the song. They are information overload. We're giving them all of this information that is not important, and it's slowing down the reading process. So here's how I explain it to my children with the help of a Vietnamese teaching assistant to translate for them into Vietnamese. I say, okay, everybody listen. Welcome to Phonics. Phonics is a world where we are going to look at these things that we call letters, okay? And letters are symbols or pictures that represent sounds. Now, I assure you, my teaching assistant is translating this in a way that fits their minds, okay? But this is what I'm telling my kids. So letters are symbols or pictures that represent sounds. And sounds combine with other sounds to make words. And words combine with other words to make sentences. And sentences combine with other sentences to make pages or books. So in this program, you are going to learn all 42 sounds of the English language. You are going to learn to master 85% or more, just like a native English speaker or fully fluent, 85% of these words or better. And we have a total of 250 words that we are going to be teaching you in this program. At the end of this phonics program, you will be able to read all kinds of books, okay? That is how I pitch it to them. And I never say the letter name to them ever. So I know what you're thinking, like, what do you say? How do you present? What language do you use? For me, I simply point to the board and I say, okay, everyone, today's sound is S. The sound is S. Can you say that? S, S, S. Great. Okay, everyone, today's sound is ah. Ah, here's the action for ah. Can you say that? Can you do that? Ah, ah. And we never talk about the letter name. This helps so much, again, because we only tell them what they need to know, and we don't tell them anything else. This, in my mind, speeds up their reading process. Again, this is just from my experience. Our kids are learning to read so quickly. The children that we teach here in Vietnam through our Jolly Phonics program are top of their class in international schools, regardless of nationality. I have a student who studied with me. He went to this big international school, grade 1, Vietnamese, never learned English before talking to me. And he's top of his class, regardless of passport, regardless of nationality. His little brother started studying with me when he was 4, doing Jolly Phonics and reading. At the end of kindergarten, or what they call reception in his school, he placed into the beginning of grade 2 reading level. So at the end of kindergarten, he placed into the beginning of a grade 2 reading level. And I believe a large part of that is because we really focused on what he needs to know, and we trimmed off these extra things that are important later, but they're not important as you're really trying to master the process. All right. So no one got mad at me for that one. No angry comments. Oh, nope, we lost one viewer. So, okay, sorry about that. But the last thing I want to talk about is, and this one is controversial, okay? Again, from experience, I've taught over 500 kids. I've trained over 500 teachers who've seen amazing results here in Vietnam. I'm just speaking from my experience. I'm open to your feedback on this one, all right? Don't teach comprehension when you are teaching phonics. Please stop teaching comprehension. Don't show a word with a picture above it. Please don't do this. Why? Because, well, we got a comment, 3 to 4 age. Do we need to introduce only reading or writing too? Sorry, side note to Akula. I will answer that question later when we get into our question and answer. So thank you. Let's hold on to that one. All right, back to comprehension. Imagine this. You have a picture of the sun, and under that you have the word sun, or 3 sounds. So please hold your questions. Nice to see you, Charlie. We're going to have a Q&A session in just a few moments here. I will answer them. I want to get through my comprehension here. So here we go. If you have a picture of a sun and you have the word sun underneath it, students in Vietnam just memorize everything. They cram. And so if you have a sun, they already know that that's called the sun. They're not even looking at the letters. If you have a car, it's such a common word. They already know it's a car. They're not looking at the letters. And so they're not breaking it down into all the parts. They're not breaking down the word car into 2 sounds, the k and the digraph R. They're not breaking the word sun down into 3 parts. You can't talk about any of that because visually they're just skipping. They're glazing over the letters. They're looking at the picture, and they are just memorizing vocabulary. So for me, and again, this is controversial. There's a lot of people out there who will disagree with me, but I really am against teaching comprehension when you are teaching children phonics. For me, they learn who, what, where, when, why comprehension questions right at the very end of a Jolly Phonics program. When they finish their 42 sounds, I move them into a reading program. That's where we start to play around with and investigate reading comprehension. So just to recap, here's what we're looking at. I talked about some of my things that I think you should focus on, making sure that your handwriting is clean and presentable at all times. Consistency in your presentation, using the board in the same way all the time, or teaching things in the same order so the children can pick up on the routine, because children love routines, especially young ones and especially English language learners. It's easier for them to follow if you're always giving them the same thing and you're not confusing them and mixing it up. We talked about throwing dots under the sounds to help the children see, okay, there's this many letters, there's this many sounds. Also, the dots really help you see digraphs because some children do have a hard time seeing digraphs. We talked about making sure that your words are manageable, not just in number, like how many you show them, but also just in difficulty. You want to make sure that you're challenging them, but you don't want to cause them to stumble because the difficulty of your words is too much. And we talked about the official Jolly Phonics recommendation is to teach alternative sounds the same time that you teach the standard. The example was A, the letters AI, don't say letters. I'm only saying it to you, sorry. And AY, so AA, teach them at the same time. Also sprinkle tricky words, which are high frequency sight words, throughout your program. Don't cram them at the end. Just sprinkle them here, sprinkle them there, sprinkle them there. You're memorizing 2 or 3, reviewing 2 or 3 every lesson. And then we talked about a couple different games. Hangman, guess what I wrote. Let the kids come up, they guess what they wrote. Just some fun little games. And then we talked about choosing cursive or, pre-cursive or print in your presentation, your handwriting, or in the quality of flashcards that you are using. Finally, the 3 bad habits that you must break when teaching phonics. We said stop teaching uppercase letters, or at least until they have mastered the 42 sounds as lowercase, and not just the sounds themselves, but being able to read the words. We said stop saying the names of the letters. You do not need to know the names. You do not need to know the alphabet. Just focus on the symbols and the sounds that they represent. And then finally, we said, don't teach comprehension with phonics. They will just shortcut, look at the pictures. It turns into a vocab memorization activity, and they're not learning how to really break the words down. All right. With that being said, again, I just want to thank all of you for coming today. And I would like to open up for some question and answers from you. You can ask me anything at all. You can ask me about what I do here in Vietnam. You can ask me about my program. Before we jump into that, we got a couple questions in the chat. And I just want to remind you, there's a special discount below in the description, whether you're on the Podia platform or on YouTube. 30% off my online Jolly Phonics program with an official Jolly Phonics certificate for webinar registrants. And that discount will only be available for the next 7 days. So check out the link in the description, 30% off. That online training looks like this. You get an email Monday morning, 8 o'clock. It gives you some videos to watch. You watch them, you study. Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock, you get another email with a few more videos and things to learn. Wednesday morning, you get a third email, 8 o'clock, and you make videos and you send them to me, showing me that you know the actions, showing me the sounds, and a little bit of the singing as well. Finally, Thursday for 2 hours on Zoom with me live. Friday, 2 hours on Zoom with me live. I take you through my entire Jolly Phonics program as I have designed it, especially for English language learners. So I take you all the way through every single step. I tell you what my lesson plan looks like. I show you what my board setup looks like. I give you everything you need. I explain all of the videos that are here on the channel. I have over 75 Jolly Phonics videos on the channel here that are Jolly Phonics themed that teachers in India and all over the world are using right now to teach their children in the classroom or to teach their children online. And I love when you guys use my videos to teach your kids. It's so cool to see these videos all over the world. And I make them because we use them here at my school. And I think, man, these are awesome. I want to share them with the world. So they are there for you. You can find all of that on the channel. Also, if you follow the link in the description, it'll take you to my online store, thereadingfactory.com, thereadingfactory.com. Right now, we have a couple different items in the store, some custom-made flashcards, a couple PowerPoints. Coming up in the future, we're going to have over 200 sets of flashcards for you to purchase digitally, and they will be available in small amounts, and then you can buy a big bundle pack as well. So, enough about that, enough about me. I want to jump into the questions. I see some good questions here. First off, I'm going to go up to Akula Smart Phonics. We answered how many alternatives in UK Jolly Phonics. We said there are 17 alternative spellings. I'm just going to pull up the official Jolly Phonics app really quick. Rosalind, I do see your question. I'm going to jump into that in a moment, just so you know. So please stay tuned. All right, we're going to jump in here. I'm on my iPad. We're on the official app here. And we're scrolling through, and you can see there's your tricky words. There's your alternatives. Sorry, it's kind of hard to do backwards. There's your alternatives. So if you touch into any of those, you'll see a list of them. Great app, highly recommended. All right, next question. We're looking at Charlie Anderson. How often do you teach each child? How long do your sessions last? Charlie, great question. Here in Vietnam, it's obviously different. I own and operate a language center. The kids go to school during the day, and then they come to us in the evening. We get our students 2 days a week. We have them for 90 minutes each time. They have a 10-minute break in between. So they learn for 45 minutes. They take a 10-minute break, and then they have 40 minutes after the break to learn. We find that in 2 times a week, it's more than enough for them to learn. Our younger children are learning 1 sound per class. Our older children are learning 3 sounds per class with some reviews sprinkled in. And so our younger program, they're learning the entire thing in about 6 months, and then our older program, learning everything they need to know in 3 months. Side note about that, Jolly Phonics has these awesome sort of new orange decodable readers. They're absolutely fantastic. They are free in the App Store right now. They're free in the Apple App Store. They are free in the Google Play Store. They're called Jolly Phonics Orange Decodable Readers or Orange Readers. Just Google it or look it up in the Jolly Phonics Facebook group. They are completely free right now for download. Not as a PDF. They are like a EPUB file. and they are absolutely an amazing resource. If you use them correctly, you could have kids reading their very first book after just group 1 of Jolly Phonics, which is just 6 sounds. So I hope that helps you out, Charlie. Rosalind, I'm jumping into your first question here. Hello, I'm a parent doing homeschooling in Trinidad and Tobago. Awesome. This has been enlightening. Thank you. I have a 3-year-old daughter, my 4-year-old niece. We use the workbooks and the app. Rosalind, that is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. No problem, Charlie. Thank you for the awesome question. Rosalind, I am not a fan of the workbooks. Again, I work with English language learners, and I believe personally, the Jolly Phonics program is primarily made with a native English speaker in mind. There's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes there's too much information. It's an overload. Again, so when I look at those workbooks, my own children would have a hard time doing them because they have to understand all of the instructions first, and there's a lot of information on those workbooks. So when I work with Vietnamese students, I just think, okay, I can't explain this to them. The TA, her English isn't always great. TA, teaching assistant, her English isn't always that great. So sometimes it's hard to explain. So I try to keep things as simple as possible. The workbooks can be a great supplement, but I don't make them the main part of my program. I'll come back to that in a moment. Akula Smart Phonics asks, for clap, crab, creep, do these words have any rule for the C sounds or for the K sounds? Well, first of all, they all make the same sound, okay, but they are consonant blends. So you have the letters CL, you have the letters CR, and then the third one also has CR. So that would be like cl. I would teach it as cl, cr, cr. But we still tell them it's 2 separate sounds. So if I'm sounding out those words, I am saying k, ul, ap, k, ul, ap. When I'm blending, I'm sounding like this. Clap, 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 clap. That's my reading part. So I still teach them, of course, as separate sounds because they are, but then I tell them this is a consonant blend. So to help you a little bit, when you see this, when you recognize this, instead of saying k-ul, you can say cl, 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 cl. And I don't like to say cl because that's that schwa on the end, adding that extra sound, but it's a little difficult, a little tricky. I hope that helps with your question. Can you explain about the k sounds at the end of the word? Akula, it sounds a little bit like you are maybe talking more about spelling. So I apologize if I'm misunderstanding your question. Charlie, I'll get to your fun and snappy question in a moment. Thank you again for the great question. Akula, it sounds like you're talking about spelling. So for me, we don't focus on spelling. The beautiful thing about synthetic phonics, the beautiful thing about Jolly Phonics is that if they can read it, they can spell it. Okay, that's it. Spelling is not taught as a separate subject because they already know what the symbols look like. They already know what they're hearing. And if they know how to write, they can write as well, and it's not a problem. So they could spell it wrong technically, but they could still spell it correct phonetically. So if I told a child, if I sounded out the word kick, okay, and I said k, and they spelled K-I-K or K-I-C, I would not mark them wrong in a phonics class because that is phonetic spelling and it's correct phonetic spelling. I would tell them, hey, good job. That is good. You are hearing things correctly, but the spelling is officially wrong, you know, if you're trying to spell correctly, but you're hearing everything perfectly. So in the context of a phonics class, I don't mark phonetic spelling wrong. All right, I hope that answers your question. Let me know if it did not. Rosalind asks, how do you integrate the app with the in-person teaching? Rosalind, I do not integrate the app into my in-person teaching. I use the app as like my teacher helper. So I jump in the app all the time to review things. And I do use the app when I'm doing one-on-one tutoring. If you jump into the app, I'm going to pull it out here really quick again. And if you touch the list of words, we have like a, sorry, one moment. We have a list of words here. And when you click on the list of words, here, we hit flashcards, we can do this. And if you hit it, it has British sounds. And if you swipe, you can go to your next word. So that's great for one-on-one, but I don't use the app in my teaching. I do use the videos on my YouTube channel in some of my teaching, but I'm not a fan of technology, so I do most of my stuff on the board. But if you check out the YouTube channel, Wordplay English Language School on YouTube, you'll see I have all of these beautiful interactive, fun flashcards that they go through, and you can use those. If you are one of those people that uses technology in the classroom, you can use that, and it's a great video to help them review words. Charlie, I'm getting to your fun and snappy question. I just want to say one more thing here about this. The beauty of what I've done with Jolly Phonics is I've turned it into a program where you can do everything on the board with a marker. You don't need any of the Jolly Phonics materials. Now, please, Jolly Learning, don't call me and tell me that I stop people from buying your materials. I love Jolly materials. However, they can be expensive because here in Vietnam, they're really hard to get anything into the country. It's expensive for shipping. Not everybody lives over there. And for me, again, like there's just too much there, and I need specialized items for my learners. So I just go ahead and I create most of my own stuff. There are some fantastic resources in the Jolly Learning store. The Orange Decodable readers are great. They have the finger phonics books are awesome. Those are some excellent resources. There's a lot of other ones, but then there's a lot of stuff that I can just make by myself. So I do everything on the board, and I make all of my own flashcards, which I do sell in my digital online store, link in the description. Charlie, how do you keep your classes fun and snappy? What different activities do you do to keep children engaged? So first off, Charlie, that is an excellent question. What I do is I think of my class as a theatrical performance. It's a 45-minute performance, and then a 10-minute break, and then a 40-minute performance to finish it up. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not talking about being a clown, but I have energy of up and down and up and down and ebb and flow and moving in all directions. So in the beginning of my class, it's a nice, fun, swift review of sounds. After we go through the sounds, I'm tapping on each sound on the board. After we go through our sounds, we stand up and we sing, and we do, in Jolly Phonics, you have actions. The snake is in the grass. The snake is in the grass. The snake is in the grass. And then jumping forward a few, we are clicking castanets, ka. And I go around and I interact with my kids, and I'm bouncing around and I'm reading their energy. And when I see a kid who's not participating, I make eye contact, I bring them up. After that, I sit them down, we play a game. And with these games, sometimes it's great to get them involved. So if it's a guess the word game and I write a word and they have to guess it, I invite them up to participate and be the leader if they're good enough or old enough. Then I spice that up by giving prizes, for them doing well. So behavior chart you can clip up, and the higher you clip up, you get more tickets. You cash in tickets for prizes. That's kind of the stuff we do in the Language Center. But if you're in a public school, even, you have ways to reward your students. And then I have a lot of, whole class activities, small group activities, partner activities, one-on-one with the teacher activities, and I mix up the style all the time to keep it fresh, to keep it interesting. In my online Jolly Phonics training, which again, there's a 30% discount in the description for webinar attendees, in my online training, I go even deeper and I tell you all the activities I do. I spell them out for you. I explain every single detail, and I actually send you the PowerPoint as well to give you everything you need to run your own Jolly Phonics program. If you take my online Jolly Phonics program, if you're in public school, you just have some great tools to use in your own classroom. If you're like me and you're in an English language learner setting, you have everything you need to basically implement your own program, your own successful Jolly Phonics program. So in that training, I'll explain every single game I use. I'll answer very personalized questions that you might have for your own program, and you can ask me more specific questions to help you out in your situation. I hope that helps a little bit. Rosalind, thank you so much for your questions. They were fantastic. Akula, we're coming to questions are about spelling. Akula, I don't teach spelling rules. Again, it's if you learn the phonics, you know how to spell. And then for me, I was spelling bee champ, okay, when I was a kid. And I did not learn how to spell by learning rules. I learned how to spell by reading and reading and reading and asking my parents, what does this word mean? What is that word? Why is it spelled that way? Why is Keith, my name, spelled Keith when I comes before E? And so I learned them very casually through reading all kinds of great books. I never learned spelling rules. So the only real rule, so of course in Jolly Phonics, you have your alternatives, the 17 alternative spellings. Like, for example, the IE says I, that's your standard, but then Y says I sometimes, IGH says I sometimes. So you have your alternatives, and then you have like your magic E, okay, or your silent E. So like whip, W-I-P, whip, and then you put the E on the end and it becomes wipe. So I do teach the CVC words, or the magic E, but I don't really get into all of the other things until we see them. So for me personally, I don't like to get into every single spelling rule because they are so rare that I just teach my children, hey, if you're reading and you come across this, ask somebody about it. May not be the perfect answer, but that's how I learned. And I loved reading, and that's how I increased my vocabulary. And that's how I learned a lot of things, is just reading all these books and asking my parents all the questions. All right, scrolling down, looks like we don't have any more questions. Shout out one more time, any questions out there? All right, so I just want to thank you guys all again for attending the webinar today. Again, we had 700 people, 65 countries. And now I'm wondering if I said 7,000 all day. Geez, that's crazy. Anyway, 700 people, 65 countries signing up for this webinar. And it was a lot of fun sharing with you guys. I love to share. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. I do this stuff quite a bit on the channel. Go ahead and dig through it. You'll find stuff that you can use in the classroom. I just saw a teacher on Facebook today that was sharing my videos in her online teaching and using them to make money. I love that. Please do that. It was awesome. I benefit, you benefit, we benefit. So it was great. Really a lot of fun to have you guys. Just one more time, I want to say, I do offer online Jolly Phonics training with a certificate, official certificate. I am a certified Jolly Phonics trainer from America, based in Hanoi, Vietnam. If anyone has any questions at all, my contact information is in the description. You can email me or send me a message at info@keithtacey.com. That's KEITHTACEY. Info@keithtacey.com. You can shoot me a message, ask me any questions you have, and I can answer them in more detail and point you in the right direction. Trisha, thank you so much. Charlie, Roslyn, Akula, everyone else out there, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to be doing this more often. I'm thinking maybe we'll do some weekly webinars. So if you have a topic that you would like me to talk about next time, please leave it in the comments of this video. Send me an email, send me a message with what you'd like me to cover next time. I'm going to mess around with some different platforms. Maybe we'll jump on Zoom so I can do some more interactive things to show some of the activities on my iPad. But anyway, please, I love when people ask questions, and I love helping people solve problems. So whatever it is you want to know about phonics and reading, I'm here for you. Thank you guys again. This has been Teacher Keith. Thank you for watching and following along.